Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. This is going to be a bit of an interesting video. I've reviewed 4 volumes of Cirque so far. I've given them all positive reviews. And when I read volume 5, I was just on this great emotional, not a roller coaster, a great emotional escalator where I was just getting happier and happier with it. I had the positive rave review all planned out in my mind, and I immediately went to volume 6 and enjoyed myself for a big chunk of volume 6. And then some big plot revelations happened, and I started mulling it over and thinking about it, and I was a little annoyed because I felt like it was going for something great, but not quite. So, the spoiler-free review of this is Cirque du Freak is one of the most entertaining series I've been reading this year. It's consistently fun. Every volume I've been enjoying it more and more, and building up credit is important. So after like 5.5 volumes of just building up some straight credit, author Darren Shan has kind of given me enough that I'm willing to see this out with him and maybe overlook some of my OCD nitpicks with volume 6. That said, it's kind of like an example of, it's easy. It's hard to keep a plot continually heading in that direction and handle all of these themes. So maybe it's that it's shooting for a really great message. And because I'm OCD, I'm going to talk about why I think volume 6 doesn't quite live up to that. But you really should read Cirque du Freak. It is such a surprisingly fun book. I can't believe that this started with me talking about a character named Reggie Veggie and how I thought that Reggie Veggie was better handled than Squirrel Girl. And 5 volumes in, I'm still digging it. All right. There's deaths, there's betrayals. You have been spoiler warned. Get out of here if you want to experience this without spoilers. Here we go. So, even that hat, it has such a weird sensibility to it all, and yet there's this real, genuine heart underneath everything. So, the author's name is Darren Shan. The protagonist's name is Darren Shan. So Darren Shan, the character, has to undergo these trials to prove that he is worthy of being a vampire. And the the honor of the student reflects on the honor of the teacher. So this is really the only way he can prove that his teacher was correct in violating vampire law and blooding him, bringing him into the vampire world. And all of volume 5 is just this fantastic, scrappy hero having to endure great hardships and trials. I love how each trial has its own kind of head game to it. He's got to carry a rock through a maze, slowly filling up with water, and he has to keep a mental map, but if he panics and loses his mental image, then he's sure to drown. So he just has to keep calm and keep his mental picture in place. He has to climb over these stalagmites that are covered in small spines and carefully keep his balance. And there's some really interesting stuff that's foreshadowing wise of the law in vampire society. So this is a really intense honor culture. They're all about, dying honorably and dying in the tournament ring as you show how manly and tough and good at fighting you are. And they kill anyone who fails the trials. Now this is important because for Kurta, who's sort of like this guy with the little scars on his face, who's kind of like the nice pacifist type vampire, he sort of sees vampire society as being too strict and too obsessed with death when there are only about 1,000 of them left. He sees the extinction of vampires coming up and he wants them to modernize. He wants them to stop using traditions that are inevitably going to lead to their extinction. And one of those traditions is they kill anyone who attempts the trials and fails. So Darren's in big fat trouble, but so far he's doing okay. Now, one of the things that's a bit hypocritical about vampire society is they're willing to bend the rules without breaking them. So when they see he's injured and the trial is the next day, he gets lucky and they have a festival right at that day so that all official business gets paused and he has time to recover. Now this is neat from a writing perspective because it's a setup. So you think, okay, he's doing great. So then he has to dodge all of these fireballs and be smart and strategic about where he places himself. Right at the end, he makes a strategic blunder, gets burned. Oh, this character goes through so much hardship. It really, you feel it, and you feel his pain. So now he's even in worse shape. He needed 3 days to recover just from getting scratched up by those stalagmites, and now he has no top layer of skin, right? So you'd think that would mean he's screwed, but the vampire princes kind of come up with a way of giving him the time he needs to recover, and they say, oh, well, we can't attend your next trial. It'd be it'd be offensive for us not to be able to attend. Therefore, we will postpone until we can attend. So they're not breaking the law. They're just finding ways to get around the law because they're rooting for him. Now, his little friend, Harkin here, sees that he's about to get killed in his next trial and interferes, which defeats the point of the trials. Now, I was kind of expecting, okay, well, they're going to kill Harkin and give Darren another shot because he didn't make the screw up. But he confesses that I don't think I was going to be able to win before Harkin interfered. He's a very honest character, very straightforward and truthful. And because the Vampire Society are inflexible, they decide, well, it doesn't matter if you had no say in what Harkin did. Your trial was interrupted. You failed your trial. The penalty for failing your trial is death. Now, this is where we see kind of Kurta's moral philosophy in contrast to Vampire Society. He thinks that's a pointless death. He thinks it's completely pointless to execute a boy who's noble and is giving it his all and clearly has honor because of someone else's action interfering with his trial. So Kurta has a point. He sees a problem in the Vampire Society, and because he's compassionate, he's going to help Darren escape from his fate. Which is something that Darren kind of feels guilt about. He says the vampire part of me, wants to stay and accept my execution, but the human part wants to leave. And something that's actually been a subplot throughout this is how much of Darren Shawn's humanity does he have to give up to be a vampire, where at first he didn't want to do any vampire stuff. He could sort of gradually gained more and more respect for his vampire tutor, and gradually he's becoming a different person as he accepts their culture and their ideas. But he does run away, and his buddy Garton helps him. Now, get ready for this. I love this panel because it's just like a really important, close-up of the character with like really light and dark shadow just to indicate the importance of this moment because, spoiler alert, Gavner's not going to be with us very long. So this entire time, I kind of saw it coming that Kurta is a little weird. He seems to be obsessed with peace with the Vampanés, and I'm thinking, okay, is he going to betray them to the Vampanés to get peace? And it happens, but it doesn't happen in quite the way I expect. So Kurta betrays them. He kills Gavner. Let's see if I can find the moment because it's actually pretty epic. He kills Gavner, and of course, Darren feels betrayed. He feels angry, and he escapes down a river, and he kind of like throws away. Go away, low battery. He throws away Kurta's offer to save him, and he goes down the river and the mountain, presumably to his death. Now, there's some great author comments where he talks about getting to read the novels and really getting into it, having his expectations continually violated. He also talks a little bit, it's really interesting about the process of adapting it to a manga because a novel has a different set of pages every volume, but a manga always has the same number of pages. Therefore, there are easy adaptations and hard adaptations. I can't wrap up an entire trial in just 18 pages. It's just a waste. I should be able to stretch this across 2 volumes. And he talks about some things he wished he could have included that he didn't. He looks back on doing 5 volumes worth, which is a year's worth of manga, and how rewarding it was, and he thanks all his readers because the manga industry loves their customers, and he gets you set up for the next thing. Will Darren live or die? What is Kurta's true goal? So the interesting thing they are doing is that Kurta is a traitor. He is a Judas type of character, but he has a really strong motivating factor, which is that he sees the Vampire Society essentially going extinct, and he anticipates a war that is just going to result in effectively extinction for both sides. So he is a traitor. That's bad, but he has a very is there a good reason for betrayal? Well, it's making him sympathetic because you're starting to understand that he might have a point, that Vampire Society is doomed the way it's going, and he's gambling everything on a coup d'etat. Now, I think it's still evil because he's willing to kill innocent people. He's willing to kill people who get in his way in order to accomplish that goal. But Volume 6 starts to very subtly handle this theme. There's one line that I've just got to read because it's so good. Now, my problem is it's using a lot of plot contrivances to try to make this subtle point about war, where for the vampires, this looks like a war of self-defense against the purple Vampanés, and yet there's all this war, is war ever the answer? Well, war's the answer if you're fighting a war of self-defense. And some of the plot contrivances is dude, why don't you just tell the vampires about what you know about the vampires? You can work out a plan that doesn't involve you doing a coup d'etat. That kind of stuff. It feels like things are being invented or fudged. Like people aren't having conversations or asking questions like, why did you betray us? Tell us more, before they act. And that's because of that, I get a little annoyed because it feels like things are happening because people aren't asking questions. Now, despite that, I'm really impressed by the themes of the writing and the characterization. So for Darren, like, he's just been through heck, and something actually gets underscored. So I forgot that he burned his hair in the Trial of Fire, even though they mentioned that, because he's had this, you know, kind of cool anime boy head covering on this whole time. And when he gets down, he gets it knocked off, and it just hits you how much stuff this kid has been through and how much he's been hurt and what a toll it's had on him. Oh, man, that hits you right in your gut. And then he has to make this, you know, he barely survives the cold, and he has to make this big moral decision. Do I go back and face the death penalty so I can warn the vampires about the betrayal? Or do I just go and live my life and say, you know, whatever to the vampires? And of course, even though there are these problems with the vampire society, all of his friends are vampires. So he's leaving his master to die, he's leaving his friends to die, and there won't be justice for Gabner, who's dead. Now, I thought it was interesting that immediately the artist drew him with the headband again, so you can... So if you were bald and burned the whole time, I just keep looking at this bald head and thinking how gross that is. So he gives us something to kind of help us, even though we understand the hurt and the damage that's been done to Darren. He's burned all over his body, he's lost his hair. This way we can kind of like accept him again as like a cute young anime protagonist, and we don't get distracted by that. But we felt the impact of that. I thought that was just a neat little artistic touch. So he faces his moral dilemma, and he eventually decides he has to go back. But he wonders about it at first. He doesn't want to die. This is the really important scene. So this is what spoke to me most about this whole thing. So he's talking about how he needs to reveal that Kurta betrayed them and murdered Gabner. I hate him, Seba, but I still think of him as a friend. He saved my life. I want him to know how much he's hurt me. Maybe it doesn't really make sense, but I want him to see that I don't get any pleasure out of exposing him as a traitor. This is really interesting to me because it's violating kind of the tropes of traitor, I'm going to get revenge, I'm going to murder him and his family, and I'm going to make him suffer and beat him up before I kill him. Like, Darren is a very sympathetic young man. And this is important because this is what contrasts him to the sort of Spartan, beat everybody up, kill anybody who loses honor vampire society. And this is just kind of like a neat panel underscoring that, where these two intense vampire dudes are arguing with each other, and the shadow is upped and the angles are made, you know, sharper to accentuate like how intense and full of rage they are. So their problem is, if they kill all the vampires who are coming, they're in a tunnel, which means that the vampires have more numbers, but they're at a disadvantage if they get bottlenecked and they fight one-on-one with a group of vampires. So they want something that avoids a Pyrrhic victory. I love that the old guy actually defines what a Pyrrhic victory is for young people, and Darren comes up with a clever strategy to immobilize the vampires in the halls using the poisonous spiders in the halls. And it's a great little, you know, twisteroo gambit. Now, here's where I start kind of losing touch a bit, because I feel like in trying to make a subtle, like, morally relativist point about the horrors of war, I feel like Darren Shan, the author, is maybe losing sight of some things. So Darren comes up with this plan. The vampires go and they, you know, are bloodthirsty. They kill all the vampires, and Darren sees the vampires fleeing, and he at first says, go back, the sun's going to kill you. But Darren's not hurt by the sun yet because he's only a half vampire. He's not a full vampire yet. So the guy kind of like stumbles towards him and falls on his knife, and Darren realizes this is the first time he's killed anyone, even though he's kind of like indirectly responsible for it. And it's clear that he's not up to this in the same way the vampires are. The vampires love fighting. They love dying with honor. They love killing. And Darren's shown bravery. He's shown all this courage, but he's not sure he likes the bloodthirstiness of the vampires. Now, in the vampires' defense, they think they're fighting a war of self-defense. If you're going to like learn those warrior virtues, then you're going to get like into the rush of things. You're going to be happy that you're defending your country. It's going to feel glorious. It's the glory of war. It does make sense for Darren's character that he's sort of young and naive. He is innocent. He's very sympathetic. Therefore, he doesn't immediately adapt or doesn't immediately adopt the vampire worldview. But my problem with this is a big fat contrivance has led to this fight that's left Darren jaded, right? So what they find out is the Vampinays they all killed were a peace party. They weren't coming to kill and conquer the vampires. They were coming to do peace talks with the vampires so they could work together to stop the Vampinays Lord from killing them all. Why on earth didn't you mention that at any point? Did you just think they wouldn't believe you? That's a plot contrivance. So now Darren feels bad because they've killed all these Vampinays who were peaceful and didn't want to kill vampires. I don't know. It just doesn't seem realistic to me that someone wouldn't say, "Stop! We're not here to kill you. We're here to talk peace." So, yeah, I don't like that. I do like how they kind of wrap up Curta's character, where he kind of like gets to say his say. He gets to admit that I wasn't planning to kill the vampires and betray them to the Vampinays. He was planning to force the vampires to surrender to the Vampinays before the big war, because he knows that in the war it's going to be a war of extinction and all of them are going to be wiped out. So he was willing to sacrifice freedom for security. He was willing to kill his fellow vampires in the name of doing that, but he believed it was the only way to save any vampire lives. Now, I think that's morally relativistic. They kill him, they execute him. Darren feels sorry for him. He asks for, he doesn't ask for mercy for himself. He asks that his assistants will be honored after their deaths because the vampires believe that the way you die has something to do with the afterlife. And his request is denied because the vampires are inflexible. That's kind of the point that's illustrated by Curta's execution. Then the question is, well, are they going to execute Darren after all that? Because technically, he's been sentenced to death. And their way around that is, well, we can't undo the death sentence because that would violate our law. But if we make you a prince, the princes are above the death sentence. And I don't like that. It feels like a violation of the spirit of the honor culture thing. Like, what would have happened if Curta was made a prince before Darren outed him? Would they have not been able to kill him because he was a prince and he would be, like, not subject to the laws of execution? So I don't know. I get the theme that the vampires are not a perfect good guy group. They have problems in their society where they're too willing to throw away young lives while they're on the verge of extinction. They're willing to throw away their lives for shows of masculinity rather than value, we need to save our numbers for an actual war and die there. It doesn't do us any good if we train you to be a badass warrior and you die in our mountain because we interpret any failure as deserving of the death penalty. But I feel like they're making a morally relativistic message about betrayal, and that kind of soured me on all of Volume 6. So the part I liked most is where Darren explained that he hated Curta, but he didn't take any pleasure from exposing Curta as a traitor because Curta saved his life. He still perceives Curta as a friend, even though he's a traitor. It's a little like Christ in Judas, but it's losing the thread a bit by making out that, oh, Curta had good reasons for doing what he did. I don't know. What would have fixed it? I think what would have helped it is if people ask questions like, if Curta had talked to the vampire princes and they'd said, we don't care, we're going to kill all the Vampinays. And he knew that, the prophecy says all the vampires will die. That would have helped a little bit. If Curta had said, please don't kill the Vampinays, they are here for peace talks, they're not here to kill you, that would have helped me. And then they said, we don't care, you're a traitor, we're going to go kill him anyway. And then they found out that the Vampinays were a peace party. That would have helped me a little bit. I don't like it when characters don't ask obvious questions. Now, I'm still invested in Darren Shine, so I've been annoyed by some plot contrivances. I am still invested in Darren Shine because this kid has been through so much. The emotional stakes of having to go back and face the death penalty so you can save the people who have exposed you to the death penalty, that is great stuff. I am going to finish this series. So that's a little shade on author Darren Shan, and I'm really happy with the manga adaptation. He talks a little bit about, you know, having to put on a human suit because he's a cartoon frog to go meet the author, Darren Shine. I feel you, bro. It is rough being a cartoon anthropomorphic animal and having to wear an animatronic human suit so that you can interact with all of these weird people, dude, human beings. He talks about, you know, being nervous and practicing his English and just sort of being stunned by the author's aura, and then making an idiot of himself and forgetting to actually introduce his name. He talks about, you know, just like slice of life of meeting the guy and what it was like. And he talks a little bit. Oh yeah, so the interview was printed in Shonen Sunday 2 months later, and you know all of his family made comments about how bad he looked in the photo with the author Darren Shine. So that just interested me that this was actually a Shonen Jump or Shonen Sunday series. That it's pretty mainstream, I guess, right? So this is a really interesting East meets West mashup where the writer has Western sensibilities. It's a Western setting. They're using a Western plot, and there are times where you can tell this was a novel before being adapted. But Takahiro Arai is really giving it strong manga sensibilities purely through visuals. So I'm just completely fascinated by this. Very strong manga, and I'm enjoying myself. 21 minutes, we gotta stop it. 20-minute videos are the bane of YouTube. I'm number one Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell to receive notifications. Check out my Subscribe Star. Best way to support this channel. Thank you, Subscribe Star supporters. Thank you, Super Chat donators. I love you guys, and I'll catch you later. For relativism! Shoot. I messed up this entire opening.